listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to yet again another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Live on Tuesday nights right here on YouTube and Facebook at 9 p.m. Restreaming out to a bunch of other platforms that I have no idea I forgot about. Yep, but you can catch us on all the social medias. Like, share, subscribe. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian, and... That's it. Hey, you don't...
Hello.
You don't have your cough this week.
Hello. What cough?
Yeah, your cough is a little bit, well, it's faded. It's gone. I guess those Ricola.
That works. Then he goes like,
He's got some phlegm.
Yep.
It's still, I still do too.
What if I just came over there and beat the snot right out of you?
Well, then it would be your snot, not mine. And I'd be okay with that.
yes.
If I beat the snot out of you, how is it my snot?
Because you obviously would take it, I guess, at that point. It now becomes your snot. You take it from me, it's yours.
Listen,
It's not his snot.
how?
But it is.
What if that's like?
he takes ownership over it.
What if that is the origin of that saying? Like, what if like when you had phlegmy lungs, like they used to think that you could just beat it out of them?
Yeah, kind of. Well,
Yeah.
like
So
the
then
bless you,
the doctors
get rid
would
of the
just, like,
demons.
beat the crap out of
I mean,
people.
hell, they used to
make 'em
bloodlet.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
used to let people's blood out.
So then
Yeah.
it's like, that now
Then they
people
would
are
just
just like, I'm going to
beat
beat the snot out of you. And they don't realize that used to be a medical term.
Well, guys, we have a packed show. Okay. we
So
got.
very-
I was gonna
Very good.
just dive right into it.
I know,
because,
but I wanted to beat the snot out of somebody.
well, you may by the end of this show. We got so much to cover.
Yeah.
And there may be some things that we talk about that just pisses somebody off. You want to beat the snot out of me.
Yeah.
And I'd be fine with that. We'll quarrel right there on the show. How about that?
When people say
Quarrel.
dive right into it, they literally used to just dive into whatever they were going to dive into.
I
Well,
was-
Brandon's never dove into anything. He's always dwelled.
Dwelved.
So
I dwelled.
I thought he delved.
no, he
dwelved.
He let's
It's
dwell
the
right into
dwarvish form of delving.
Nice.
it. He
nice.
said, let's dwell.
That's right.
Oh,
It's what short people do. Short people
we do have
got
we
tall
have
problems.
Yeah. We do have a packed show. A lot of great headlines.
Yeah, we do.
Story time later, and of course our review, which we're leading into. I brought with me. I got overexcited.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was going to do
Plus you
with
brought
it.
your
Wonderful
Bible.
I
but-
was trying to look up dirty rap lyrics, and I was going to pretend like I was reading them out of this, but this is the complete William Shakespeare collection.
Now, he didn't write that.
No, Francis Bacon did.
True.
Maybe. But I've always liked Shakespeare, and so, I mean, the movie we're reviewing is from Joel Cohen.
Shakespeare has a much better name than Bacon.
That's
that's
exactly
why-
why he
yeah.
had.
But
yeah.
here's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love bacon?
He was like, no one wants to watch plays.
Well, they
by
didn't
a
have
man named
bacon back then.
Yes, they
Yeah.
did.
Are you sure?
Well, who wouldn't have slaughtered a pig and cooked that thing up
But
the
they
first
called
thing
it
you
bacon?
saw it?
I don't know.
They
Maybe
called it sliced pork belly.
Maybe.
They
call
would-
it bacon.
Well, if they whatever they called it, Shakespeare probably came up with the name.
He may have came out.
I mean,
with the
he
name
came up
Bacon.
with tons of words.
Yeah, he did. I mean, names. Miranda's
was-
name was originated from Shakespeare.
But
That's my
Shakespeare
sister's
couldn't
name.
even read or write.
I mean,
Well, we don't
what?
know that.
Beethoven
That's-
couldn't hear, but he made beautiful
He's
sounds.
going-
But he
going
couldn't
off
hear
of
his
the-
music.
No, he just felt it. He just felt it. He's going off of the conspiracy theory.
I am. I
you
am.
know.
Not to mention, I'll just say he was Eminem before Eminem.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying.
Wow.
Okay, you think Eminem's number one? Psh, Shakespeare's got it all day.
Absolutely. It's
Come
not,
at
I
him.
mean,
Come at him, bro.
It's not like people walk around just speaking automatically in iambic pentameter. That was Shakespeare.
Who is the real Slim Shady? Please stand up. Please stand up.
Dost thou stand up?
dust? Thou?
But you are right.
Thou
There's a
hearken back
reason.
to the 8 Mile.
There is a reason.
Yeah. I mean,
you brought up Mr. Billy Shakespeare.
I completely understand people who are not fond of Shakespeare.
You
That's
make him sound
okay.
like a country music artist.
Yeah. Bill Shakespeare.
It would be a great name
Yes,
for
it would
a
be.
country artist.
Billy Shakespeare.
I would,
Billy Shakespeare.
Oh, I bet he'd come up with some great songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
and then turn him into iambic pentameter and get it go.
I
don't know.
He said, "I am big."
Look, let's delve into this.
Yeah, let's go into the movie review.
Well, wait. I thought you were
Now
talking.
I'm just thinking about
I'm sorry.
naming
don't
your
even-
kid Bic Bantameter, and then he could be like, I am Bic Bantameter.
Yeah, I am big pentameter.
No, that was a bad
That's
joke.
great. That's
All right.
great.
I'm sorry. We didn't even tell what people we were going to review.
This is
No.
as I was saying earlier. Joel Cohen has done an adaptation of Macbeth. It's received a lot of
tragedy
critical
of
buzz.
Macbeth.
Yeah, the tragedy of Macbeth, starring Denzel Washington, and we reviewed it because that's what we do. So here it is. Award season is in full swing, and for now we seem to be leaving behind blockbusters and franchise films, with the exception of a small few still scheduled to rear their heads in the upcoming weeks. What we have to look forward to now is the time of year where Hollywood dumps anything and everything that they didn't want competing against the likes of movies like Spider-Man. In years past, this usually meant all the movies studios felt were doomed to fail anyway. The last decade, however, has bucked this trend, with studios releasing either smaller indie films that have been good but would have been overshadowed if released any other time of the year, or else wide releases for films that previously saw limited release in hopes of earning coveted award nominations. This week's review is of a film that fits both the smaller indie and the award circuit mold. From Joel Cohen, famous for his collaborations with brother Ethan on such works as Fargo and No Country for Old Men, comes yet another Hollywood adaptation of a William Shakespeare play, The Tragedy of Macbeth. Going solo for this film, Joel has brought to the table all of the visual flair and artistic style of a Coen Brothers film to Shakespeare. While Shakespeare adaptations can be a dime a dozen in Hollywood, the good ones always stand out. And in the case of Joel Cohen's adaptation of Macbeth, it definitely stands out. Starring Denzel Washington in the lead role of Macbeth, with Frances McDormand as Lady Macbeth, the film is the familiar story of Macbeth, including witches, plots of murder, and madness. Joel adapts play to screen in a very straightforward and bare-bones manner. If you know the story of Macbeth, you know the film's plot. This, of course, is not a problem, as again, it is meant as a direct adaptation of the play itself, not a modernized telling or adaptation based upon the play. So then, what makes Joel Cohen's take on the Bard's play so unique? Well, there is, of course, the rich visuals one expects with any Coen film. Shot in black and white with minimalist sets shrouded in constant fog, Coen's Macbeth is both cinematic in its telling and visuals, while also evoking the simplicity of theater stage. Through use of lighting and cinematography, the film accentuates the characters and scenes in a way only film can, but the bare rooms and open country sets keep the focus on the actors and dialogue. There are not massive or grandiose set pieces nor excessive props. This minimalistic approach evokes the simplicity of Shakespeare plays while highlighting the rich themes therein, keeping the focus on the actual substance of Shakespeare's tale rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. The film is well acted, with Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand both giving exemplary performances in their roles. Both being Oscar winners and having acted on stage throughout their careers, this is none too surprising. Not talked about enough, I feel, however, is Kathryn Hunter's portrayal of the three witches. Stealing the show in every scene they appear in, Hunter is mesmerizing and chilling. What makes Coen's adaptation of Macbeth stand out above others, even more so than its visuals and performances, however, is its accessibility to those who may not be the strongest fans of Shakespeare. Now, I don't think it's the most accessible adaptation of Shakespeare by any means. Coen still leans strongly into the language of Shakespeare's play, and there are times when Coen lets the performances and dialogue play out exactly as you imagine Shakespeare to play out. But for a film that tries to maintain the dialogue delivered in iambic pentameter as written, the cast's mannerisms, along with a delivery of lines that is in most cases spoken as people conversing rather than enforced poetry, you can tell that Coen didn't want to just make another art house Shakespeare film. He wanted people to actually enjoy and be enthralled by it. This is also notable in the way Coen has adapted the play for screen. Some scenes and lines of dialogue have been cut for a more streamlined film. with a runtime shy of 2 hours. Some scenes are combined, but any changes made isn't done so in an attempt to do better what Shakespeare has already written, but to allow the film to visually show these plot points rather than let characters give long speeches about what is going on. On stage in a theater, you don't have all of the visual cues to give audiences, and so characters must often monologue about the plot. Where this isn't necessary, Cohen trims the play for something more concise and cinematic, and it pays off. Shakespeare has been done to death and will continue to be done so. He has left a lasting legacy that has influenced our modern language and storytelling, and it is only natural that creative minds would wish to revisit his plays to give their own spin or flavor to great stories. Cohen does this all while honoring what makes Macbeth one of Shakespeare's most popular tragedies. It won't entice everyone, which is fair, as Shakespeare isn't something everyone can get behind. But it does offer up plenty for those who otherwise may not typically care for Shakespeare, and definitely will satisfy those who already love the play. I give The Tragedy of Macbeth 3.5 out of 4 stars.
3.5. Uh-oh, it sounds like Sean needs a recooler. Maybe somebody slipped something in y'all's drink.
Cool. I don't
I'm
have
good.
one.
Yeah, I don't. Oh, you didn't get it one before the show. You need to get some.
I didn't realize it was that close to
way
the,
better than I have been in past weeks.
Oh man,
I know. Well,
I'm finally
I feel a
starting
lot
to
better, yeah.
get over this
Come out of it.
stuff
I
in
still
my
got
chest. Yeah.
I still got some flimmy stuff in here,
Same.
but
it's just
know.
with the coughs. That's really it. I mean,
Yeah.
but other than that,
The coughs.
I'm free.
coughing.
I'm free. I'm back into running, trying to get
Choking.
that, starting that new year off right. Dieting, running. Got to, I signed up for the mini and the Triple Crown here in Louisville. I'm ready to go, guys.
That half
I'm ready to
mile
go.
you did the other day, you're gonna have to step
Whew.
it up.
Hey, I got 15 weeks to trade it, all right? But let's talk about the tragedy of Macbeth.
Yeah.
I hope I don't have a tragedy while I'm running and I have a heart attack. So 3.5 out of 4 stars.
Yeah.
For the
I
tragedy
guess
of
if
Macbeth.
you want to force a segue,
I have to try. I don't have enough time to think about it. I just got to go.
The only tragedy
No,
I have is the tragedy of McDouble.
Yeah,
That's the only one I have.
Yeah, the price tag. That's what'd send me over.
So you used to be able to get that thing for $1. It's ridiculous.
They don't have a
This
dollar
is not us
menu
talking
anymore.
about that. They don't.
No.
They
This
do
is
not.
the tragedy. This is what happens when Macbeth becomes king.
It's like, look
everything
here.
inflates.
In the past, people used to talk about kings and history and
Burnham
go to
Wood
plays and
comes to Dunstan.
Yeah, and now today we're not worried.
Inflation.
We're not worried about assassinations and war. We're worried about inflation.
Yep.
That's right. Your
Yeah.
hair is going nuts, by the way, with your.
Yeah,
I love
see
it.
Oh.
No, it's
The
beautiful.
way I just shoved the head.
it just.
you
went,
know.
Wow.
You look like a mad
I'm
scientist.
trying to do the Frances McDormand.
There you go.
So-
Would you bang Frances McDormand? We were talking about it during the
I
break.
think she is.
while we were
I
watching.
was
it.
trying
probably-
not to talk about it.
I think
During the
she's
break.
probably a very learned woman, and she would be a good lay.
Is that the way you'd put it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think your words were. I think she'd be a freak.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Look at her. Look at the speeches
can't.
she's given.
That was what
The
turned.
speeches she's given?
Oh, and her acceptance speeches at the Academy Awards.
Yeah, the one she won for Nomadland was
know.
well, and 3 billboards.
So I
that
wanna-
one was.
Yeah,
oh
that's
my
true.
gosh! that
Talking
was-
about Oscars though, because I did want to actually mention that. No,
Y'all
no.
avoided.
Let's
my
talk about the
question.
movie, actually.
That's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
Is Frances McDonald, Denzel Washington, both
McDonald.
McDonald, McDormand,
Frances McDonald.
McDormand.
Yes.
We were talking about McDonald's.
That's
so.
true.
They're getting a lot of buzz. Golden Globes. Now they've been nominated, both of them, for the SAG Awards. And honestly, and don't get me wrong, I do love this movie. I do understand the praise it's getting. But I don't really. They're good. Don't get me wrong. Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington are very good. But their performances didn't blow me away the way I was expecting based on all their praise. I could see even if they get nominated for an Oscar, I don't think they would deserve the win. And to me, Catherine Hunter, who played the witch in this movie, was the best. She was terrifying, and all of those scenes were so well done. Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to knock the performances of Denzel and McDormand because I do think they were good, but I really wasn't as impressed as I was expecting to be with how much praise they've gotten.
Well, let me ask you this. You gave it 3.5 stars. I was at 3. But, Brandon, what about you?
I was actually sticking with. I'm going 3.5.
3.5? Okay.
Yeah, it was.
But
I'll get into
with
that.
a 3.5-star rating, and you not being very impressed with their performances, then where does that 3.5 come from?
Oh, everywhere. Here's the thing. Their acting was solid. Like, I mean, I'm just saying, like, it didn't impress me based on the hype. I'm not trying to knock them as being bad, because I do think Denzel, it gives one of the better performances of Macbeth I've seen on film. Not that I think there's a lot of great adaptations of this play on film. Most of them are Hamlet. But yeah, I just the cinematography, the lighting, the use of the black and white, the way he made changes in order to make the play and the story more of a cinematic quality while maintaining the smallness of a stage. I told Brandon there's a scene where Macbeth gives basically this whole like monologue, the soliloquy about why he wants to kill Banquo, and they skip over that at first in the movie, and I was like, oh, they go straight from him like telling Banquo and his son, good luck on the ride, and then going to the murderers and him hiring the murderers. And in between that, in the actual play, he actually has like this inner monologue about why it is he wants to kill Banquo. So I was like, oh, it's odd they skipped that, because now it's kind of like, well, why all this? Like, you kind of know why, but it's kind of weird that it's just, I'm going to be your friend now, I want to kill you. But then after the way the murder scene plays out, they incorporate that monologue into his conversation with Lady Macbeth. And I really enjoyed that, because I was like, oh, so they actually kind of incorporate it more into the plot with the other character as a back and forth, so it's not just this awkward monologue. Whereas when they do the dagger
I was going to
monologue,
say, and it was kind of a theme throughout the entirety of the film, where you can tell Joe Cullen. I mean, it even says in the credits, written for the screen by.
Yes.
So you could tell he was taking more of an approach of, it was only an hour and 45 minutes, which most.
I appreciate.
I did too.
It's short for a
and
Shakespeare
honestly,
adaptation.
for something as depressing and down as this, it's like I didn't want. I mean, because the whole film from the very get go, it picks up in terms of the weirdness and oddity of the witch, all the way through the end of just death and decay and tragedy. And so to have that for a solid hour and 45, it's a heavy movie.
It is.
But I will say what I thought was interesting was his take on that. But it was his his welding of film and play. It was like you were watching a play, but it was what you would imagine if you were sitting in a theater, and not a movie theater, but an actual theater watching something on stage. If they expanded to the extent that they could, the set pieces that you normally see that are 2D or 3D, just within that little space they have on stage. And that's what I liked about the art direction, and the director of photography did an amazing job with just all of the contrasts and the deep dark blackness and the gray bleakness, but also like the fog in the background. It really built an atmosphere that was. It was funny because you had texted me, and I thought the exact same thing when I finished. We trashed The Green Knight a few months ago for being too art house. And yet this is exactly what art house done right with the right material. And Shakespeare could easily fit into those camps. Yeah. No, not quite Baz Luhrmann's, ridiculous over-the-top Romeo and Juliet, which there are some people who praise it, not me.
And it gets a lot of critical praise, but I think it's terrible.
Right, but ultimately, I really did feel like this. You can go in several different directions with Shakespeare, and that's the beauty of why I think this work is relevant, and why I used to, just like any angsty teenager, hate anything with kind of tradition or value of culture. But what I love about seeing Shakespeare continue to come back is not only is just his brilliant writing and poetry, but also we all know the stories. We're all taught it, growing up. Hopefully people will continue to teach it in schools. But it's something that everybody's familiar with. It's like taking a work of Elvis or the Beatles and redoing it in a different way. You're not the originator of it, but it's cool to see how it can be remixed. And the beauty of Shakespeare is how long it's lasted, because the characters and the themes and the story transcends. It is truly timeless. Yeah. And yet you're able to take that and make all these different iterations, and some are bad. Yeah. We've seen bad ones. Yeah. But this is one of those that was just stellar from beginning to end, and a very unique vision that I thought Cohen pulled off.
Yeah, that was my biggest praise of the film. Like Keith said, I did enjoy the actors' performances, not to a degree that I was, again, thinking Academy Award worthy, but the film itself stood out to me in cinematography, in the set design, the production. That was where this film completely blew my mind, because when it first started, I was watching. I'm like, oh man, they went letterbox, and then and then I'm like, oh, it's another freaking black and white movie. It's like some people are only doing black and white just for art house reasons. Yeah, it's a trope, and this was done. This was black and white for a reason. Like it, not only did it make it feel old, but it also just the contrast in all of the scenes are just deep, dark, saturated black and bright white.
Very deliberate.
Yes, it's just a beautifully made movie, and I'm not a fan of Shakespeare at all. In fact, the only thing that got me through Romeo and Juliet was the fact that it was modernized. Yeah, swords as guns or guns as swords, and that kind of like their over the top acting was about the only thing that made me understand what was happening, because the language I just don't understand. And Macbeth was another film like that. We were me and my wife were sitting there watching it, and she was zoned out through almost
What's
all
going
of it.
on? What are they talking
She
about?
had no idea that it was going to be a literal
translation.
The play, yeah. And I tried to tell her that, but we watched 20 minutes of the movie, and I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, well, in that 20 minutes, Macbeth he's decided he's gonna assassinate the king.
Yeah,
that's literally 20 minutes of dialogue, and that's what they said.
Yeah.
So that's it's a very simplistic and short story. It's just the language drags it out, and that was maybe the only setback for me. Was I knew what it was gonna be, but I guess I felt like there was gonna be more that made it easier to follow along. I didn't feel like necessarily the acting was as kind of over the top to at least portray what they were saying.
The inflections.
The inflections. That's the word I was looking for. I didn't feel like there was enough of that. So literally I would set, and it's 10, 15, 20 minutes of dialogue, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's going to kill him.
I guess
I
pieced this together.
They're going to do that. Yeah, I had to piece it together by what was actually
I was
actually seeing.
To me, was kind of the brilliance of it, because I liked that. For one, if you're a fan of Shakespeare and you do know these works, and I kind of saw this, and I see almost any time there's an iteration on screen or even plays, it's kind of a, not a coming of age. What's the term I'm looking for? The phrase. It's kind of like an actor and even a director's way of arriving. It's a way of, okay, I've tackled all these different things, but when you do Shakespeare, you're getting back to the heart of what, play and theater and all of it is. And it's like this, to me, it's kind of this honor to do Shakespeare and portray any part of it. And I think any actor is, because it is a challenge. I mean, it's like you do have to memorize so much. Yeah. But yet when you understand, and that's, I don't know, that's the hard part of it, is when you do have the ability, because we don't talk in that lingo. Yeah. And it's not like people walked around and talked like that. I mean, it was written, obviously, it's very poetic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it is funny that it's like when you have people, you can deconstruct how you're going to say a certain line or a certain sentence, specifically because you're trying to convey a certain point, and you know that is exactly what the phrase that you're saying is going to convey, but you know how to now add a little bit of acting into it to show those who may not be able to follow along, or who don't have the work right there and they can read from it, or they can even pause it and try to make sense of it. Because the whole idea of a movie is that you're going to thoroughly just watch it from start to finish without that. But to me, I thought they did a really good job of balancing the obscurity of which you may not understand the text if you've never read the play or don't know the story, with the idea of those who love Shakespeare and who are obviously going to come and make sure that you don't tarnish or ruin, his very work. And I thought, Cohen just...
No, I agree.
Did that beautifully.
Keeping it original was well done.
Yeah,
it's something that
it's just not your thing.
Personally, I couldn't
I
follow
totally
it.
Understand that.
Some of the mannerisms even that Denzel displayed, I thought to myself, and I talked about it earlier when I was quoting Training Day. There's a scene you even have it in your in the review, where the leaves come through the window, and that's to signify the army overthrowing his and invading the castle, and he turns his back to the window and walks towards the throne, and he's kind of like throwing a little like tantrum with his arms and legs, and it put me in the middle of the street in Training Day when he is saying,
I agree.
you know, shoot me in the back, mother effer, shoot me.
Yeah.
King Kong ain't got nothing on me. Like, that's his mannerisms translated from one film into this, and that's fine because that's who he is. But that wasn't something believable in the.
It kind of took you out of the moment.
I liked it. I thought it was because I mean he's pissed. He's like here I am like trying to play fate.
I get it, but when you've already seen that acting before, then it's kind of
it was almost like it was too modern.
Yeah,
And here's the thing, I agree with that. But I honestly think it was intentional. And I could see it being divisive as to whether or not you like it or not. Because I totally would understand the take of people walking away being like, yeah, that was a little too like, you know, now that's how somebody would act. You know, whereas when you go to see in some kind of medieval play or something, you're like, you know, I doth mad.
Well, even
you know,
the,
or
even
something,
the,
you know, it's not going to be as
scene
dramatic or
was,
I love
pronounced.
the fight
Yeah,
scene.
but it was, I mean, I thought it was awesome, but again,
I love that.
That was, I mean, they fought with almost martial arts kind of movements, and I'm just like, that doesn't
choreographed.
that just doesn't
play,
seem very like Renaissance to me, or,
Well,
or romantic
I'm
period.
glad you brought up the swordplay because one thing
It was awesome, but it just didn't fit the time.
But one thing I really liked about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've seen like maybe 3 or 4 other iterations in terms of movies that have done Shakespeare, but I loved that they did, you know, and there's not a lot, you know, it's rated R for violence. There's not a lot, but I was glad that what's in there, it shows the brutal nature of what the story holds.
Yeah,
Because you often see that reserved when you're talking about Shakespeare, because again, it's like, obviously the story is very intense and there's death and murder.
Well, Macbeth is known as his bloodiest play. It was considered, even at the time of the Renaissance, it was considered a very and by our standards today,
he
you would
stabs
think
the king in the neck.
Yes,
You know, that was
and by our standards today, it's like when you've seen stuff like Saw, it's like, no, this is very mild,
Right.
But yeah, it was back then considered to be a very brutal and bloody,
and that's what I
and
love.
I like that they do. Now, granted, if you want to see a really brutal and bloody version, go watch Roman Polanski's Macbeth. It's
Okay, so see, that's what I was
way
gonna
more.
ask.
It's way more gory than this one is.
Okay.
It also has nudity for no apparent reason. Like there's no like
they all.
it's
of
Roman
course.
Polanski.
You gotta have,
but it's Roman Polanski.
Yeah.
like it's just one of the things that
tits and ass. It's what sells.
it's like it's violent and it's got boobs, and I'm like, why are there boobs in like Macbeth?
Yeah.
Other than maybe the bedroom scene with his wife, where that might be understandable. There's really no other scenes where a naked woman would come into play.
So you're saying you want to see Frances McDormand naked?
Yeah, we've already talked about this.
I'm just saying. I'm bringing it back up. I don't know. I just thought we'd make it full circle.
I did like the visual. There's certain things that, I mean, I get the sword fight scene, but I also didn't think it was more modernized any more than a sword fight scene from Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings. And technically, those would be even earlier than this time period if you're going by Middle Ages. So I think it's just one thing I was
Those are fantasies.
I know, but still.
Come on.
I was just like, they did it there. You know, Macbeth's not a true, like, it's not a historic story.
No, I know.
So.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, I like, to me, the visuals, I think, is the thing that sold me the most on this, and how they use those visuals to tie into the themes and what the characters are saying, like using the fog to go along with them talking about how the weather has not been good since the assassination. I love the fact that the handles on the doors were shaped like daggers.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So when he's given that monologue about seeing the dagger, it's not just like on stage, just random, there's a dagger, but I can't reach out. It's like, I like the fact that they actually gave a visual cue for that rather than just it be like,
Well, at first I thought it was light because
I thought it was
sees
light coming through the door.
I thought it was
also.
light coming through the door at
Until
first.
he puts
also.
his hand on it, I didn't
I
understand
didn't realize it
what-
was a handle.
Yeah, and then I noticed after that, all of the handles in the castle are shaped like that. So it's like, it wasn't just this one random. And I like that. I was like, okay, yes, obviously the point of the monologue is he's seeing this in his mind because he's driving himself crazy thinking about it. But I like that they gave the visual cue. It wasn't just this whole abstract thing. Like, because again, like with The Green Knight, it's like they're trying to do art house, but they didn't make it so abstract that people are like, what the heck's like Green Knight was
it was too overdone.
when you had like,
It's
these
too
giants
over the
howling
top
at the moon, I was just
that was done.
I was done. I was like, I don't even know anymore.
Alrighty, guys, there it is. 3.5 out of 4 stars for The Tragedy of Macbeth.
Yeah.
Only available on Apple TV Plus. And
It's in
people
theaters.
might, and this is what I meant to open up
Limited
the show with.
the theaters.
We chose this movie because, yes, we know We know Scream is out there. We know it busted Spider-Man's chops at the box office. It dethroned it.
It's getting good word of mouth. I actually am interested more in seeing it
well,
now.
and that is going to be our review next week.
Yeah,
we're going to go see Scream, and we will give you that review.
I've liked all the other ones, so I'll be honest about it. Cause
I still have yet to see 4.
Even if there's good word of mouth, if I feel like it doesn't live up to, because that's what they say. They say this does like pay a good homage to the series as a whole and fulfill.
Well,
and I'm like, and if it does, I'll give it that.
I say with Wes Craven now having died and no longer being a part of this series, it's like they're obviously going to do some, throwbacks or at least some homages.
The people
to
that made
They're
this
gonna
are
try.
the same directors that did Ready or Not.
Yeah.
And that one was really well done. So I'm like, okay, that was a satirical horror film, so I could see how they would be a good fit for Scream. So I'm hoping.
So we will get to that next week, but I think we're ready. We got to dive right in. We got a lot to talk about.
There's a ton of
headlines.
Headlines.
He's so excited. Let's roll that beautiful headline open. Yeah, I love it, man. That's great. Keep it up. Keep up the enthusiasm. So much that she came over.
See, if you get too enthusiastic,
she thinks the show's over.
Yeah, she just comes over there bright.
She's like, they only get that excited when
Edie,
the show's
come here.
over.
Stop,
trying to
get
molest
down. She's just, she's kissing you, man.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
it's okay.
I was trying to throw her mallard. She's got her
No, her little mallard.
Her mallard.
So,
there it is. It's all tore up.
Well,
Look at that.
Which are we're going in order? We dive like which headlines?
Yeah, let's dive right in with the first headline right at the top.
Number one.
Our used to be homeboy. We praised him on the show plenty of times.
I still praise him.
Let's talk about it. Whedon opens up.
Whedon opens up.
Breaking the
Whedon
silence.
responds in an interview that was apparently done a year ago that they're just now publishing.
Yeah.
So it's not like
I didn't even catch that until after I read the article.
So it's not like he actually just now came out and finally responded to all the accusations. Apparently he responded a year ago.
Yeah.
And nobody decided they were going to publish it until they were like, okay, he's been drugged through the mud enough that we can stoke the fire some more with some news and release his response.
Well, and I was gonna say, not only that. Well, they were probably too worried about if you really you got to think about the weight that comes with publishing something with Whedon's name. You're going to immediately get shut down.
Well,
and Vulture was
again,
probably worried about.
They probably were, and I mean, I will say there's some definitely there's some things in here he says that I'm like, yeah, he's a dick, but at the same time,
that was exactly what I thought.
But here's the thing.
I
already knew that. Like
we link to the full Vulture article. They give you the full perspective there. And again, there's some floweriness in terms of not portraying him or portraying the victims, so-called victims.
Yeah, I see both sides, honestly.
Well, I was going to say, they do a good job, ultimately, of showcasing, what he's come to face his demons. I hated the preface of the whole article in the sense that...
Undoing of Joss Whedon.
Well,
I hate the
and
title.
Well, he's been canceled. We already know it.
And that's the thing. And not only that, but he's been to therapy, and in fact, they even say it's kind of the same therapy that James Franco and like Kevin Spacey have went to.
Well,
I'm then you're doomed.
The good leftists have to do. They have to. It's like, how do I get uncanceled? You can't, but you can still jump through these hoops.
That's what struck me as probably the most insincere. Is he immediately they start off. Now, granted, I don't know how their conversation started, but he talks about how he has what was deemed as complex post stress. Or PTSD, basically. Complex PTSD, like past PTSD.
Yeah.
But it was just, I'm sitting here and I'm like, the moment you start labeling it and you have this term, it's almost like, see, okay, look, I can point to that now.
Yeah,
that's the reason for all my demons.
Say that quite a lot of the stuff that he's been accused of, he just flat out says he didn't do.
Yeah,
and some of that I believe, some of it I don't believe. His statement about the cast and crew of Justice League being quite rude, I believe a lot of that because Ray Fisher is, I think, a prick.
He's a jackass.
And I just now, granted, I don't fully believe him on the Gal Gadot stuff. I'm like, no, it's like I think you're full of crap on this.
And just that reply of, well, English isn't her first language. I'm like, okay, you're being an ass.
It's like she is fluent in English, so that was as soon as he said that, it's like, okay, I have to kind of believe her a little bit because you're being a dick about it.
Yeah.
I don't really believe Ray. Here's the thing: I don't think Joss Whedon is racist. I don't think he's sexist. I do think he's an a-hole.
Yes,
that doesn't mean he's racist or sexist.
Right.
But of course, Ray Fisher is out here saying he's racist and he's trying to ruin my career because I'm black. No, he's not. He might be an a-hole.
Yeah.
He might be a dick. That's true.
Well, and
but I don't think
even
he's doing
one
it
of
because
his
you're black.
one of his, well, I guess you she would say friend / I guess they've been somewhat estranged since this whole falling out. But she was a writer on Buffy. And she worked with him, and she said that, they had that kind of relationship where he would say little short, snippy little things because, again, he said he was raised on such a pedestal with all this fan base and this fandom that really kind of brought him to the forefront of, thinking that he was a god.
The internet brought him up, and then the internet tore him down. He said he's not lost on the kind of the symmetry of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you're right. I mean,
Exactly.
the internet his career was bolstered by the fact that he was like this king of the nerds that created Buffy, Firefly, Dollhouse.
He even uses that as the excuse for why he had the affairs on his ex-wife.
Yeah.
And the fact that there were a lot of chances he feels like he would have regretted. He knows he would have regretted if he didn't take it because he was the cool nerd in the room that he never got that kind
Everybody
of attention.
praised him,
And again, here's the thing: should he be canceled? We've come up with it all the time on the show. No. Just because every sleazeball, exactly,
he should be responsible.
He should be responsible.
He should take responsibility. And that's the thing. He's not taking responsibility. He's he's pwning it off on everybody else.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they raised me up. Well, don't let it go to your head. Oh, they put me in this situation. No, move yourself out of that situation.
Yeah.
This is all up to him.
Yeah.
And it could have all been avoided.
Well, it shows the character flaws that he has.
Exactly.
Well,
yes.
And it just shows the crap human being that he is at heart. Because at the end of the day, I'm sorry, but when you give somebody who is not a responsible person, who doesn't have respect for others, when you give them this kind of throne to sit on because they can do one good thing really, really well, just because you have that one good thing and that's what you're being applauded for, doesn't mean that you're a good person.
No.
And he showcased in this interview, I think, that alone.
And I don't think he's a terrible person because there are plenty of people that have said that they had a great experience working. Like a lot of the members of the Avengers said they had Alan Tudyk, which he did retract his tweet, but he originally tweeted, "Well, I don't believe what Ray Fisher's saying because I've never experienced anything like that with Joss Whedon." And then he later came back and said, "Well, I shouldn't have said that because I wasn't in that situation and I can't Of course, you got to walk.
Well, of course, but
you can't defend the person being canceled.
But he's going to be Joss Whedon is going to be subjected to the same thing that all these others are because he sticks to the narrative that they want to provide, which is when you start to fall in line with the idea of what is your truth and here's what my reality of the situation was. It's like, no. The moment you allow any kind of thread of that to seep through, you are now going to be held to those standards.
Yeah.
And that's why you're getting called out on your BS. Because ultimately, at the end of the day,
he was once upon a time considered like the head in feminism. I mean, Buffy and Dollhouse, and you had Sarah Michelle Gellar, Eliza Dushku. These were like huge, strong female leads. And everybody talked about, oh, Joss Whedon's this amazing feminist, and then you find out he's been cheating on his wife, and it's like, is that something a feminist would do?
Right.
So,
well, and again, and to go back to regardless of just yes, that be judge of his character.
Yeah.
But just because, I mean, there's a lot of great people out there who've done amazing things that are terrible people behind the scenes, and I think this is in that case the exact instance of one of those things. He's written a lot of great characters. He's written a lot of great lines and beautiful, wonderful dialogue and great stories. But at the end of the day, just because the sum of those stories may come up with somebody who you think couldn't possibly be that person, they have their demons. They have their skeletons in the closet.
Like you said in the past about people being more than just... It's like you have like a total sum of like the good you've done and the bad you've done. It's like I don't think Joss Whedon is only this evil person that they're trying to paint him out to be, but he's also not the kind, gentle soul that everybody used to think he was either. He is a complexity of both. It's like, yes, I could see with like Alan Tudyk and some of these other people, he was gracious and kind because he had no reason to be a dick towards them. But then when people challenge his authority, like on the set of Justice League, he turns into a monster because it's like, well, how dare you question me? I'm going to ruin your career.
I'm the great one.
Yeah. So it's like, it's definitely a thing where I think he has a lot of issues that he does need to own up to and take care of and not point this whole, well, I had this and they did this to me. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
And no doubt.
Because you didn't hear that from James Gunn. James Gunn went under fire for stuff that he tweeted or said 10 or 15 years ago. And it came back to bite him in the butt. Only nowadays does that actually happen. Do we care about what you said 10 years ago?
Yeah.
But still, he apologized.
Only if you're a certain kind of person.
That's true. Yeah. But it just speaks to his character because he came back, he apologized, and he made it a good point. When recently have I said or done anything like that?
Yeah.
And nobody could Yeah, and everyone that's ever worked with him said, no,
when
he's an amazing person.
Is said
So-
in jest versus as a joke or an offhanded comment. I mean, look, and even I will agree with Whedon. He said, of course, there's times where I blew up on set or I got mad because we're under pressure. It's tight budgets and tight schedules. He's like, of course, there are times I snapped because of the environment we work on. He said, but that was, the exception, not the rule. And I do kind of agree with him. It's like,
in
of
those
course you're going to
instances,
have ugly moments, but for the most part, again, going back to the net positive, it's like when, as a whole, you have a ton of good experiences. I do see him as the kind of person who had this tremendous success at a very young age. I mean, he was show running Buffy and Angel in his early 30s.
Oh, and Firefly, all three at the same time.
At the same time. I'm like, no, the dude was under a crap ton of pressure. And granted, he thought he could handle it. He did. Those are great shows. But at the same time, when you're in this environment that, of course, just breeds that type of, yes, the success is overwhelming, but it's like it's going to constantly percolate and let you get up to the standard of saying, I am a god. And I think he got to that level. And, of course, having the childhood he did, where he lived in a household where he said his dad was an old writer on shows like the Dick Van Dyke Show or Golden Girls.
Yeah, he wrote on, I think, Roseanne. Like, his whole family has had a career in Hollywood.
And he said, he's like, look, if something wasn't funny or it didn't cut it, he's like, you would get laughed out of the room or you'd be the butt of the joke. And so he took that into, and granted, look.
That doesn't make it,
exactly.
Yeah.
And he, of course, he says he acknowledges, maybe, my mother was a great feminist and she, that's where he got some of, probably his ideals. But he's like, just because she's great at one thing doesn't mean she was a great mother. And I'm like, again, easy to go back and have that focus now after your therapy.
But it's like, okay, but then you're doing the same thing. It's like you could
Yeah.
blame your
Right.
mom,
Following in your mother's
but now you're
footsteps.
just doing the
Yeah.
same thing. Yeah.
Well, and at the end of the day, it thwarts the responsibility that you have to take for your own actions as a grown man who needs to look in the mirror and say, I've done wrong, and this is who I'm going to try to become or try to be better at. But at the end of the day, you can tell that why he's clinging on, trying to get a word out there, is because, he even says, I'm tired of letting people trounce on my name, and I want my legacy to continue. The only problem with that is your legacy's already tarnished based on the actions you had.
It's going to be a lot of years before anybody lets him do anything again. I'm not saying he's canceled forever, but I don't see it's going to be at least a decade before anybody's like, let's give Joss Whedon another chance.
Well, and it is sad.
Very well.
On that point, that's a very sad point because, again, we do need redemption.
Yeah, no,
And
we
and
do.
at the same time of needing redemption, again, it's about holding someone accountable. And no, we don't need to be like the Sparrow in Game of Thrones. I've been watching. I love it. Shame.
Yeah.
Shame.
Yeah.
But
Well,
but it's like we do have way too many instances of people getting canceled, outcast, and then it's like they're shipped off and said we can't
you're
hear from
done.
them anymore.
We don't need you anymore.
And I don't think that's fruitful and
Then
healthy
that's how
either
you end
for
up
a culture.
That's when
It's
you end
not.
up with videos of Kevin Spacey,
Oh, yeah. In the park.
in
Yeah.
the
On the
park.
park bench. Yeah.
Now that dude's a loon.
Yeah.
That dude needs to be locked up and put in a
Hey,
straight
he's,
jacket.
he's starting to do a little bit of acting. He's done, I think, some foreign stuff, so he's trying to get back in the
Yeah,
game.
because they allow what he wants to do with those children over
It's
there.
true. It's legal. It's legal.
Yeah.
I think he did an Italian film, and it's
All right, I'm done.
he's
with
in
that.
Italy with all
I was gonna
with
come
all
up
the
with a
popes,
joke,
and
but
I was just saying he's in
Yeah.
Italy with the everyone else.
But let's move on to our
all the
second.
Catholic priests.
Well, I wasn't gonna go there,
you
but
know,
all right.
I
yeah.
was.
He did.
Let's move on to our second headline, which probably wouldn't come as a surprise to a lot of people, and it's not going to be
I was
a
interested.
major, huge headline for a lot of people. Like no one's going to look at this and see this as something breaking or news. Hollywood Reporter did put it on the front page. It was their top story today, and I thought it was relevant.
No, I do. I think it's something that's different that you don't really hear a lot of, but that I think does have implications for where Hollywood could be going.
But let's talk about. So there's investment firms obviously very rapidly starting to purchase and buy up production studios. The actual physical land of the studio houses themselves or the backlots, but also just the production company. Most recently in the article they bring up
it's an investment.
Yeah.
well, yeah, but what is the investment of? And they're ultimately banking on the fact that the property will increase in value because the only thing that they see is that there is all of these content providers, and there is a lot of people out there who want to be served all this content, and they're looking at it as a way of stepping into the market and fulfilling
now
that need.
more than ever. I mean,
Yeah.
the article mentions there's so many. Every major production studio almost has its own streaming service now. Not all of them, but most of them. And it's like everybody's going to be using this property to film on. Everybody, like all these production companies, or at least the services like Paramount Plus, Apple, HBO, all these newer ones that are like Peacock that are trying to get as much content. It's like, I mean, they're competing against each other. When you're Paramount and you have a huge hit like Yellowstone in 1883, that's a boon to your service because it's like, how can we watch this amazing show? Well, you can't unless you pay for Paramount Plus. So absolutely. So that's the idea. These firms are like, if we buy these, I know they said Will Smith's and it was
Reese
Reese
Witherspoon's.
Witherspoon's are two of them, and they're talking about Ron Howard's, and it's like, yeah, these are people that sell well. It's like Will Smith, whether he makes something that's good or not, like, I mean, it still sells.
Or yeah, I was going to
after
say even if they're
That was the only one that didn't.
well, I was going to say, but even if their production companies are about making one particular kind,
Yeah.
it's still which I think it's kind of laughable because it's like these. I don't know. I want to read one paragraph from the article. Specifically, it's from they say Candle. But they're talking about Candle Media.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Candle Media, which is backed by billions of dollars from Blackstone, that's a key investment firm to remember, has already purchased stakes in Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine and Will and Jada Pinkett Smith's Westbrook Media, and has bought outright. What was that?
Coco Melon.
Coco Melon owner Moonbug.
Freaking son loves Coco Melon.
What is Coco Melon? I've
It's
not
like
heard of this.
if it's what I'm thinking of, it's like a child's
Yeah.
sing along
okay.
show.
Moonbug's the production company that makes the show.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
and they also make Fada producer
Fairway Road.
Okay,
That's
but
another
meanwhile,
show, I don't know.
Imagine Entertainment is engaged in talks to sell a majority stake to London-based from Citricus, as reported by the Wall Street Journal. LeBron James' Spring Hill sold a stake to Redbird Capital, while Village Roadshow and what is that? Sherman Entertainment, sensing opportunity. Gosh, I hate Variety. Or Hollywood Reporter, your website sucks, okay? Your all's ads keep loading,
Yeah.
and they make the.
I've
I
also
hate
begun
that.
to
I can't
explore
stand
their
that.
options. That's the end of the paragraph.
But here, and what I wanted to, the reason why a lot of those names are important is I immediately saw the name Blackstone, and some people may not look into the weeds of what that investment firm has going on. But let me just put it this way: I think they have a lot of underlying dealings that are very anti-American. And ultimately, that to me was the name that stuck out because, of course, Hollywood Reporter's not going to dig into the weeds there.
No, they're just naming all that.
Yeah, they're just naming it.
Bought everything up.
And granted, of course, they're going to talk about the potential. And, of course, all these Hollywood A-listers are going to talk about, yeah, of course, this is why they get into the media mogul business to become one of these big producers. I mean, we have plenty of, those huge stories about artists that turn into, okay, now the big media mogul overnight, and all of a sudden they're selling vodka companies or something, like that for tons of money. And look, great. It's a good investment for them. That's the whole point of taking their career to the next level. But I think what you're seeing too is this tremendous hole that's about to get filled with these investment firm. This is part of the, I guess, capitalization of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I think it's so funny for movies that are made based on the artistic, creative direction.
Or at least for Hollywood, who is so anti-capitalist
Exactly.
and anti,
But yet they're the ones who are the strongest in bed with them.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, especially someone like
Blackstone.
Blackstone is. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I want to look this up. I may have to stage a correction. Oh, it didn't even link to nothing. It just linked to Hollywood Reporter.
Yeah, it goes back
it
to
just
Hollywood
goes back to
Reporter.
Hollywood
That's
Reporter.
stupid.
I tried the same thing.
Yeah, I was like, no, I'm thinking of BlackRock. BlackRock
okay.
investment firm. Blackstone actually may be different. Because BlackRock is the one that's notable for during the pandemic they were buying up tons of real estate just to jack up the price, or they knew there would be an inflation on the price from a lot of people who would either be would-be home buyers or they would just be able to sell it at a
Smart
huge
on their part.
Well, yeah, but and here's the thing, but at the
Little
same
evil
time,
too.
Yeah,
exactly,
No, exactly.
And
I'm not praising them. I'm just saying,
well, and that was kind of even with Blackstone, which I don't want to give them correction, don't want to associate them with BlackRock. They may have nothing, no ill will in their business ventures. But I think you have to be, which we're going to talk about this a little bit in our storytime segment. You have to be a little weary of huge companies going towards a certain market and buying up swaths of course it's a trend, and of course you're going to have these, right now they basically see it as a need to be fulfilled in the market of there's tons of content that's needed and we're going to fulfill it.
Well, and that is
it's
what makes me wary.
Exactly. How much of this is going to be quality versus just straight garbage? And again, is that a worry? Well, of course it is to people like us who consume it.
Yeah.
Because we do actually have certain standards we want to adhere to.
That was actually my number one thought when I first was reading through the article. I was like, okay, I get that some of these like Reese Witherspoon, Will Smith, they're saying this is a great thing because it's like
for them.
But outside of that, the way they try to paint it is that okay, you have things like Netflix, Apple, like obviously Netflix has shows like The Witcher that has a built-in fan base before it ever came into being. People love the games or the books. So like we can make a show out of that, turns a profit. But they wouldn't give that same amount of money on taking a chance on a new IP from someone like Reese Witherspoon or Will Smith. It's like, we've never heard of that. We don't know it sell. So now they're saying, well, these investment firms have the money to just back us so we can make what we want that'll be great in quality. And then these companies will come along and buy it because they're not taking the risk. It's like, yeah, but now the investment firm's taking the risk. And you don't think they're going to be any different from Netflix and saying, well, we could give you all this money to make that idea, but we don't know if that'll sell. We'd rather give money to make the next adaptation of Game of Thrones. So it's like, it's one of those things where I am wary because it's like, I don't know that this is a overall great thing because it's like, how is the investment firm going to be any different from any other traditional production company?
Right, yeah.
They still want that return on their investment.
Yep. I know. Well, and not only that, but there's also there's another paragraph here that's very important and key, I think, to any investment firm that's looking to buy up these Hollywood studios. We have a thesis, and the thesis is content, community, and commerce. Mayer described of Candle Media's ambitions at the CES show on January 6th. We feel that high-quality content with high-quality creators at the right brands create great connections in social media with large audiences.
Yeah.
And this is actually a huge... I was looking into this recently about how the biggest studios that are making bets on what the next big IP is. And the reason they'll go back to something like Matrix, which has almost inevitably been killed because its debut in China plummeted. Yeah. And again, it's kind of funny because it's like, Lana Wachowski makes a whole joke about it in the film. And it's like, you kind of made the point of Lana in the sense that, all right, you're sitting here with this IP and you want it to be big again. Yeah. And it's kind of like, not going to happen. It's kind of faded. It's off in the distance. Nobody wants this. Yeah. But you have to learn that hard lesson at the box office. Then you see something like this where it's like, okay, of course that's what an investment firm is. It's all about, well, how do we compound our interest on our investment? Yep. How do we make money off of this? Well, we're not just looking for just any old content. We're looking for content that reaches you on the deepest level, that connects you in all these different platforms in all these different ways. Mm-hmm. And the way in which you build audiences now are to have. That's the reason why, even though Ghostbusters failed back in the day with the 4 women that were terrible, it was like they wanted to build a Ghostbusters universe because the whole appeal of building a universe.
Everybody's thinking we're going to have a monster universe with Universal.
And it still is, though. The whole appeal behind it is we have to build something greater than a singular IP. Yep. The one movie big box office blockbuster in the summer is not enough anymore. We got to build that. We got to build an MCU.
Everybody wants what Marvel
MCU is
has.
what sells on every single platform any time of the year. You can count on it, and everybody wants that silver bullet that's going to give them that success. And it's scary because this is exactly where I understand the comments of Scorsese talking about those being popcorn flicks, and this is tarnishing the image and what exactly film is in terms of what will it stand in another 100 years?
Yeah,
what will it become?
In his mind, you're not going to have another The Departed. Unless there's the possibility of a Departed 2 and 3 and 4. Yeah. And that's where you take something, a great masterpiece, a great work, and just toss it out the window because it's a one and done. It's not something that's going to put, money in the bank account over and over and over and over again. And I see Disney freaking doing that with their Pixar films. They're driving the great films like Toy Story and Cars and all of that. They're driving it into nothing. They're just pulverizing it into dust, and eventually that's all we're going to have. But yes, to take away that, it's funny because that very same thing talks about high quality content with high quality creators. When you spread it out that far, there is no high quality anymore. And that's so what
right, when you're worried about
Yeah.
quality and not quantity, not quality.
Yeah. Right.
And they're saying you can do both. That's what they're saying.
so.
That's what they're trying to sell
Yeah.
people on. That's what their initiative is in buying up
That's
these studios.
why you have hundreds of shows on Netflix that have 8 episodes and then they're canceled.
Yeah.
Because it's quantity versus quality.
Yeah.
The quality's not there. People don't watch it. The numbers tank. They pull it. And that's what they're going to do with Reese Witherspoon
you can't-
and anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what they're going to do. If you're just trying to get somebody to back you, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to, like Keith said.
Well, Reese
if they
Witherspoon
don't-
and Will
I'm
Smith,
just
they don't
saying,
care.
If they
Well, they
don't
don't
see
care.
it,
They're walking away to the
if
bank.
they don't
Yeah.
see a
They
return
don't
on
care.
investment, they're going to pull it. And all that does is leave us, the viewer. You know, there's plenty of people that liked the Black Box, the show, and they're not making any
gone.
more of that. And there's
Dark
plenty
Crystal.
of people. Yeah. Oh my God! Don't even get me
You had
started
a
on
huge
Dark Crystal.
fan of some
Yeah,
of that.
so I mean, it's like you get people hooked and give them 8-10 episodes of something, then pull it.
Yeah.
and it's like all that's going to do is drive me away from your streaming service.
Well, it's like I'm afraid to start anything on Netflix unless it's already got 3 or 4 seasons.
Yes,
because it's
exactly.
like unless they've already hit 3 or 4 seasons, I don't know if it's going to keep going.
Right. And at least at that point, you think they now have at least the courtesy to say, we'll give you a final season or we'll give you a wrap-up.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
now it's like...
They used to be the streaming service that would give people a chance to finish.
Yes.
It's like, oh, you got canceled here, we'll bring you back and let you finish on our
Yeah.
service.
and you can tell they pick favorites.
Oh, they do.
They have like there are some that are like only 2 seasons, but they're like, by the way, you're not gonna finish, like, so we're gonna give you this to finish. And I'm just like, and I don't have that problem, but I'm with you all. It's like now before I even get invested, it's like plus I've even turned away. And maybe to my own detriment, but the certain things that do kind of pop up in pop culture, I didn't tune into Squid Games, and I've heard it's good. I know
haven't
you
either. I
all
liked it. Yeah,
you've
I haven't
watched
either.
it, and I'm like, I'll watch it at some point, but I'm kind of not in that sphere of okay, it was done, it was on the internet, and everybody had just like Bird Box a few years
Bird Box
ago.
was terrible.
yes.
I actually
Yeah.
like Squid Game, but Bird Box was terrible. But that's another point is that there's really too much to watch anyways.
Yes.
And they're
Way too-
they're
we've
sitting
talked
here
about that.
saying, you could have quantity and quality. It's like, okay, but not everybody's going to be able to see that.
Well,
so
their biggest argument has been the pandemic over the last year, and I'm like, guys,
we're not going to be in a pandemic.
exactly.
Hope
we want to get out of our
I would
houses.
like to hope.
Yes.
I would like to hope that eventually people will go back to work. And I know that like we have the whole argument of pay and all that.
That's a tall aspiration.
Yeah, I know, but it's like at some point our economy has to run again. Whether you're anti-capitalist or not, we're all going to be living.
Well, they
in
would
mud
prefer
huts.
it does.
I know.
Just on the direction of you sitting at home on your couch.
I mean, that's the thing. We're not going to be able to afford internet to watch the trailers
Not
for
if
these
the-
shows and movies.
but I do think it is funny because I think it's a very huge underlying issue with the industry in terms of anything that becomes saturated. And granted, that's the risk that all these firms are taking. It's just like the gold rush. You can have a ton of people go to one area of the country looking for gold, but eventually the gold's going to run out.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a lot of people that look at the stock with GameStonks back in early last year. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you had this huge rise of this meteoric like presence on the internet. And then of course it waned and went overnight. And it was like, part of that was market manipulation,
Yeah.
which should have been illegal and struck down.
absolutely.
But anyways, it also is this instance of trying to, I think, latch on to something that is popular and you see it rising, and these investment firms are like, well, let's seize on this and capitalize on it because it's not going away anytime soon. And they are right. And even honestly, if they make these huge investments now and they only come out with a few dollars ahead and then they're like, okay, we got to dump it. I mean, they'll at least say, hey, we came out ahead.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of firms that get shirred up because all of a sudden, they made a bad one and they made a production studio investment that didn't pan out, and it does close its doors. Because at the end of the day, that's what Reese Witherspoon and Will and Jada and all them care about. They care about the check that they're getting in their bank account.
They act like
and
this
granted,
is this great boon to like the artistic things they can
No.
do. It's like,
No.
no, y'all just
Money.
you got paid.
right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like you could talk about your sphere of influence and what you're going to have, but it's like if you don't have that check, going into your bank account, how much sphere of influence and ultimately how much are you going to have in it in the day-to-day workings going on anyway? And even if you do, so be it. But I still also think that Hollywood on the flip side of this, is countering in the wrong way. And we talked about it a little bit last week and on the weeks leading up to like just the award show debacle with the Golden Globes and how we really have stopped caring about, the Oscars in the last few years. And it's just interesting because I feel like there is an underlying, group in Hollywood, this groupthink that's populating in terms of, we have to respond in this way to preserve the artistry and the prestige of the industry.
By selling out.
But no, I think in the opposite way, by doubling down on things that are obscure, on things that that society or at large or culturally doesn't like, but they want to deem somehow as above the fray. And you just don't understand this because real film lovers and real artisans of the craft understand why this is such a paramount achievement.
Real artists and film lovers love The Shape of Fish Dick. Okay,
I'd love
everyone
to have
knows
some. I bet it
Moonlight
tastes
is a
good.
masterpiece.
But that is where I think Hollywood is countering this in the wrong way. And I don't think it's again, at the end of the day, it's like not to join them and completely abandon that hope. Yeah. But it is, I think, going to be, yes, you have these huge swaths of investment companies, but I think the real answer is going to be mom and pop production studios popping up that really take on the major Hollywood studios in a very intimate and really hopefully a resurgence in the independent scene that will have an investment firm knocking on the door. They say, no, I'm not going that route. I like what I do and I'm sticking with it. Your A24 is your Annapurna.
The hope is that like some of this buyout would allow some of this more independent scene. I mean, that's the way they're trying to pitch it now, is that, by doing this, we'll have the more independent films. And I mean, I hope we do get that. But I again, like I said, I think, these places want a return on their investment. They're only going to allow so much of these indie type films and are going to be looking for the next big hit like Game of Thrones, The Witcher, or any other major series.
And to your all's point about so many things getting canceled, it's like that, and that's what they're going to look for. Just like the Fast and Furiouses and all the tentpole blockbusters that they're the next Marvel movie. Those are the ones that are supplying the ability to make the little gemstones that they're hoping are a diamond in the rough that is going to catch on like wildfire, like a Squid Game. Squid, nobody would have seen that and thought, this is going to launch. Oh no, massive social media.
But nobody would have seen it at all unless it would have been. Social media sold that show.
Oh, absolutely.
It was just you were bombarded with it.
And what all of these firms and what Netflix and they're all trying to catch lightning in a bottle. They're all trying to find a way to create that perfect blend of how does this catch on like wildfire? How do we replicate this to become an MCU?
Another Squid Game.
Yes. And I don't think it's going to be as successful in the second season. I don't
either. I don't see. Honestly, it's kind of a one-time idea. So, but
all
we'll
right.
see.
Well, we got a little bit more to talk about in our story time segment, and let's roll that open because I think you all will. I don't know. You'll find.
There's nothing in the notes. I couldn't read.
You'll find this kind of funny.
I reread all the articles.
It's story time, where the podcast members tell their stories.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
You mad because I cut you off?
No, I like to come prepared, and I couldn't read what it was about before the show, so now I'm not prepared.
Well, I got to set this up a little bit.
All right, set it up.
Okay, so I was sitting there at work today. I thought about it, and I was like, I had a lot on my mind, and I thought about this time in yesteryear where we had these console wars. PlayStation, Sega.
Yeah.
Back in the day it was Nintendo and Sega.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I thought
that's like a great before time.
I thought to myself, it would be just crazy if there was this huge monopoly that took over anything and just created this conglomerate that, where there was only one platform. And then I got to thinking about story time and I thought, wait, this kind of is about something that's happening right now with Microsoft buying out
I just think
Activision and Blizzard.
You just wanted to
and
shoehorn that topic.
I thought
not multimedia.
Let's talk about Microsoft buying out Activision and Blizzard.
That was good.
Let's talk about it.
You had me there for a second until you said console wars, and I was like, oh, okay.
It's like,
We're gonna talk about this.
I do. It's a good subject.
Yeah.
It's sometimes I think
It's not multimedia, but yes, I had to. It's too big a news.
sometimes we
And we're
limit.
nerds.
I think if we stick only to, I think we limit ourselves. So I'm fine with this because sometimes I think you do. You got to break the mold. But yeah, no, it is huge news. It doesn't worry me a whole lot. Mainly because while I understand the massive amount of content, and I mean they are huge games, not like I guess it's one of those. Is like it doesn't affect me, so I don't care. I don't play anything like Activision. Like most of the stuff they've made in the last decade,
Overwatch, Diablo.
Yeah, I don't care about any of their crap for the most part.
COD.
So I'm like, okay, Xbox takes that. I don't think they're going to make them Xbox exclusives. That doesn't mean that PlayStation won't have to pay a pretty penny to be able to still have COD.
Yeah.
Sucks for Sony, but I don't think Xbox's idea is no more Call of Duty on anything but Xbox.
I was thinking about this earlier today after we kind of
This is why I brought it up because I thought our discussion in our text was good enough that I was like, we could expand on this on the show.
For me, as like if Microsoft were to say tomorrow Call of Duty is now going to be Xbox exclusive, I almost welcome it because I want to see Sony make something better because I think they can. I think Sony has more like Xbox has the bigger names such as Bethesda and Activision. I think Sony has the more talented names, honestly. When I look
Naughty
at their
Dog,
exclusives, I feel
Guerrilla.
like those are the games that I've enjoyed more in the
Polyphony.
last several years
Insomniac.
than the
Yep.
those are the games I have enjoyed more in the last several years than what a lot of these third-party developers have released on multi-platform releases. So I'm not too worried
and
about
even
it yet.
even Xbox's first-party studios that they've bought before these.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, their
They have
initial
Halo.
Well, and I linked to. Well, Sean, you were going to say something. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Well, I was getting ready to say, what is there to stop Microsoft now that they own all of these? They own Fallout, they own Elder Scrolls, which I do think will end up being Xbox exclusive.
That one I think could.
I think
let's say they're not.
timed
Call of
exclusive.
Duty probably won't be because that's got so many people playing it on PlayStation. They want the money from that too. But what's to stop them from saying on the Xbox platform, Call of Duty is $49.99, but because Sony has to pay more for it, they're still $69.99. That's going to drive more people to an Xbox because the games will become cheaper.
That's a smart move.
If they own the property, they can sell the games for whatever the hell they want. And I feel like that would be a good way for them to not only win the content war, they're going to win a console war because they're going to drive people to their console.
It's funny because I would agree with you if that was. Here's the thing. I think they've kind of revealed their hand. And granted, anybody can change on a dime because, look, go where the money goes.
Yeah.
But, I think their motivations right now are, and I linked to an IGN article. They have an opinion piece I kind of agree with and I kind of disagree.
Yeah.
Because he really came out blasting swinging about how their console wars were never a thing and that was something petty fanboys made up, and I'm like, shut up. If you weren't a fanboy back in the day, you weren't a real console.
It was the console war was a thing.
And not only that, it was always more so consoles versus PC than anything. And if you want to talk about a fanboy group, PCs go way harder and they're way more ridiculous.
Yep.
But anyways, it's like I do agree with his overall premise, which is it's not a console war anymore, it's a content war. And that, to me, I'm like, absolutely. That's exactly. He brought up the two recent purchases that Microsoft made with buying out. Oh, gosh, I'd have to pull it up. I don't have my text. But it's funny because even the two purchases he brought up, specifically, I was like, why didn't he bring up Mojang with Minecraft?
Yeah.
And Minecraft was honestly the first big
That
one
was
that I
their
thought,
first-
this is going to be a huge... Because honestly...
And it's still multi-platform. Like, they didn't pull that away from
But that was the
anybody.
thing, is they paid a ridiculous amount of money because they saw the popularity, and honestly, all it was just to benefit off the money that they hadn't made yet with it, but that they were going to make back. And I guarantee you, they've already had an ROI on it.
I have the article up.
Yeah,
Is
go
there a
ahead.
specific paragraph. Or...
It wasn't too far down. I can't remember exactly where it was at. It just mentions the studios that Microsoft bought recently as like the first foray into... Bethesda was one because that was the Elder Scrolls, and then I forget the other studio that they bought along with Bethesda most recently.
I'm trying to skim through it to see.
But
if you want to keep going for a minute,
yeah. Ultimately, I'm thinking of where Microsoft's head is at, and obviously their whole buying out first-party studios didn't pay off in terms of the unique one-off experience that you're only going to get on Xbox, because then they very much pivoted towards and shifted towards, okay, we're going to create a home console. It may not sell more than a PlayStation or more than a Nintendo, but it will have the same experiences you're going to get on your PC, but if you want to play it on the comfort of your own home on the couch with a controller, we're going to give you that and have that outlet, but you're also going to have the same library across both platforms, or in fact, any other platform that allows us to be on it. The fact that they have now the ability to play even on the iPhone. There's, through the Xbox Game Cloud. And with Game Pass, this huge variety of Netflix for games, pretty much. PlayStation had that momentum when they bought Gaikai back in right before PS4 came out.
Didn't do crap with it.
And they did PlayStation Now,
but it sucks.
But it's streaming, and the highest stream rate you can get on it is 720p. And it's like, but people don't want a subscription base where you don't own the game or you can't play it in its highest fidelity. It's like the games they offer are a back catalog of what should already be backwards compatible with games that you possibly own. And that's where I think Xbox nailed it. They said, hey, we're going to give you backwards compatibility with our entire library of Xbox console games. Then on top of that, we're going to have Game Pass, which is an additional service of games you may not have ever had, but if you subscribe, pay $15 a month, you can always have access to these games.
Yeah.
They'll always be there.
I'm not. I do see where they mention Bethesda's parent
I'm not
company,
seeing the other
ZeniMax.
one either,
I
but
just
that's
see
okay.
Bethesda and
Maybe that's what
maybe
it was. Maybe it was just Bethesda.
Because it may mention they kind of started with the $7.5 billion acquisition of Bethesda parent ZeniMax back in September 2020.
Yeah.
Now they do the Activision Blizzard. But I mean, it does, and what the article mentions a lot.
Yeah, I
of
was
is-
surprised
is-
they overlooked Mojang.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyways.
Oh, yeah. That really was kind of their first step, and then. And I do agree with the article in the sense of what it has to say about Game Pass, because that's the biggest thing I have felt about a lot of this is that not only like Sean said, can they dictate the price, but now they've been very hardcore at selling Game Pass, promoting Game Pass, almost more so than the Xbox console itself, because you can play Game Pass on any you can play it on your tablet, you can play it on a PC, you can play it if you own the Xbox, but you don't have to have an Xbox to play Xbox games if you have Game Pass.
Right.
And by buying all this content, everything Bethesda has, like all the Doom games, the Elder Scrolls games, those are on Game Pass. If you pay your $15 a month, you can play any of those games right now. Same thing's going to happen, I'm sure, with Activision and Blizzard. Diablo, Call of Duty. I think Call of Duty actually is already free on Game Pass, but now they don't have to pay that deal anymore. They own Activision, so they don't have to pay them to put it on Game Pass. They can just do it.
is going to be a huge
Yes.
game when it releases, and that's theirs now.
Yeah.
So I think that was going to be an Xbox exclusive anyway, for at least for a while, but now they own it. So
yeah, they can make it exclusive. They
Yeah.
put it on Game Pass. And yeah, PlayStation doesn't really have they have PlayStation Now, but that's not an answer to Game Pass.
No.
They're talking about doing the backwards compatibility because they do have to compete with Xbox somehow. Xbox has Game Pass. They have backwards compatibility. They have a lot of older Xbox games on Game Pass. I know. I lost my train of thought. For Sony, I know they just made a deal to have the newer Final Fantasy games with Square as exclusives, at least for a period of time.
Right.
And
FF7 remake was exclusive
Yeah.
for a whole year.
Yeah.
On Sony.
and they're still trying to make deals like that to where they get these exclusives, but
and
they don't
honestly,
own those companies.
But that's
They're
the
just making deals
underlying,
with
Yeah.
them.
and that's the underlying to me. I mean, here's the thing that the article even brought up, and I thought that was a pretty good point too. That if Sony did, somehow just have the deeper pockets to pull out a buy with Capcom or Konami,
Yeah.
Some huge industry where they could do
I
Metal
wish
Gear
somebody would-
reboots. And
I wish they'd buy Konami.
I do too, because they have not made
Because
crap
Konami's
that I care
trash,
about.
and
Yeah.
they do have good.
Ever since they
titles.
lost Kojima, it's gone.
I mean, I would love a new Silent Hill or Metal
yeah.
Gear, but
But I ultimately think that Sony is not in the game of. Again, they don't have the deeper pockets than Microsoft.
No.
And honestly, I read some of the comments that were on the same article, and I agreed with them where they're like, just because you have a huge conglomerate come in and swipe up, their competition, or at least they don't perceive them as competition. Because you hear Phil Spencer talk up this game of, we just want people to play great games.
Yeah.
And we don't care about the console.
Well, yeah,
wars.
he's got to sell it.
Not only that, but it's like, you don't care about them buying another box when you can be available on all these boxes.
Yeah.
Because again, at the end of the day, your goal is more money, more subscribers to your service. And I understand that as his pitch, and that's how he's got to pivot. Totally understand that. And Microsoft has the deeper pockets to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't think look, Nintendo had GameCube in the early 2000s, the weakest selling console, I think, of any generation other than the Dreamcast, which got outsold by the PS2. Well, no, the Wii U was terrible. It only sold 8 million or 10 million units.
Yeah.
But it's like, and take the Wii U. The Wii U was a failure, but it was right off the back of the Wii, just the Wii, and that was a huge success.
It was
Look
kind
at
of
the
like
GameCube.
the stepping stone from Wii to Switch.
Yeah, and but I think that's what's interesting is Nintendo has literally been the bastion of gaming ingenuity over the last 3 decades since they landed, on home console store shelves with the NES. And I'm sorry, but they've continued to iterate generation after generation with creativity and found ways to stay relevant long after all these big punches came in. I mean, the whole deal between Sony and why PlayStation became a success was the fallout with Nintendo to create some kind of CD add-on. And it launched into that was where the console wars really
It was
started.
originally going to be the Nintendo PlayStation.
Right.
And then Sony was just
and
like,
they got,
fine.
backstabbed in terms of the Japanese culture that, they felt, really offended. And I agree with them. It was like, but that gave them the fuel to the fire to create the PlayStation and the wonderful games that we came, because that was Sony's whole point of, if we're going to go into this war, or not, if we're just going to go into this market, this business, we're going to go in full throttle, and we're going to make sure it turns into something that has staying power.
Nintendo created their own worst enemy.
Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
because I agree.
Again, Nintendo's doing fine. I didn't mean it in the way that, like,
it definitely
But
created
again,
a gap.
Nintendo realized what they were and stuck with it.
Yes.
The Sony hardware keeps getting bigger, more powerful, more. Nintendo is still the weakest console there is.
But they have those
But
amazing
they have
games.
the games, and they make the console. There's ingenuity there.
And
it's definitely something that
stretch what they have. I mean, their console's not powerful, but when you're running things like Mario and Zelda, they still look amazing because they don't need the.
Well, I was saying,
amount of
they're
power.
artistic direct. It's like watching Tragedy of Macbeth. It's like it's not in 4K, 10, or the beautiful HDR. I mean, they may throw all those on there, but it's like, no, it's a black and white 4:3 film.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's how it's shot and how it's done, and it's the same way with Nintendo. It's how creative are you? And I think Sony's had this in their wheelhouse since the original PlayStation with all their partnerships and, of course, with their first-party studios. And I hate to say it, but their first parties have still stood out to be the best of the best, or the cream of the crop, apart from Nintendo, which has their own. But again, and even Phil Spencer's talked about this before. He's like, I like them all. I'd buy all the consoles. I'm like, yes, but when Xbox...
He could do that. He has that money.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. That's true. And even for us who may be enthusiasts and
right
who
now
may
he's
own
like,
them,
I like them all. I'll buy all the games.
Yes.
I'll buy all the
I buy everything. But that is what's funny is I feel like he's now trying to carve out a slice for where Xbox can be relevant. And the place in which it can be relevant is if it becomes the platform in which you can have this experience, not just there, but on all these other platforms. It's like, well, of course, just like a Switch, you can take it off the dock and go have a go with it.
Yeah.
But you can only play your Mario there. There's probably going to be some one-off experiences you can only get on Xbox or only on Xbox Game Pass.
True.
You may play it on any peripheral, but at the end of the day, if you have an Xbox that accompanies your TV and all you got to do is plop down and turn on the TV and you're going, that's where he's trying to carve out the relevance of, hey, you may not want...
Maybe you'll fire up your PS5 to play Xbox Game Pass.
I don't see it. Now that's where I see Sony saying
No.
no.
There had been rumors that Microsoft and Nintendo were talking, but I don't know that's. I don't see that.
I had
either,
heard
but-
rumors that Google Stadia was working on a deal with
Stadia
with
is
all the
dead.
consoles.
Oh, yeah?
to play their
Well, yeah,
play their
they're
games.
desperate.
And that's
There's
dead
somebody
in the
play
water.
us.
Yeah.
Stadia's dead.
And you know what? Your Amazon Luna.
Yeah, exactly. That one's dead too. That one's gone as well.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show you, there is no secret sauce. I mean, you can have big players that try to get in the game.
I think Sega's going to come back. They'll come back and wipe them out all out.
Dreamcast too, baby.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Dreams come true.
But that's exactly what I think Microsoft's doing. It's exactly what Sega did. Except they have the deeper pockets and they're going in a much more global fashion of, no, we're going to buy up these huge IPs. They're going to be our supporting underbase of throwing out a game here or there that's maybe creative that we can spark, but ultimately we're going to make sure that our experiences are out there and available. And look, Xbox Game Pass is a hell of a deal.
Yeah, it is.
And I can't deny that.
I just can't afford the machine to play it on.
Well,
you don't need to. You play it on your PC.
Oh, I know, but it's not an Xbox Series
It's not the
X.
same.
Yeah.
It's like, look,
You're
I
not
want
gonna
to play it
in
full
4K
4K.
60.
Well, this is when you get into the PC console war.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I agree.
I had a 3-month trial that I played on my iPhone with the Backbone controller, and I mean it's fantastic compared to PS Now. Because on PS Now you're looking at 720. It takes like 10 minutes to load a freaking game.
Does. It's ridiculous.
On Game Pass, it was on my freaking cell phone. It looked beautiful, and it I was playing Forza 5 in like 30 seconds. Is all it took for it to load the game, and I was in the menu, and it plays amazingly. There's no lag. And that's on a mobile device. Like,
and
that's
the perk
fantastic.
of if you do own an Xbox or if you do own a PC, like you
can download the
you
games.
can download it.
Yeah.
With a tablet or phone, you have to stream it. But
That's the biggest thing.
Streaming works really well.
Yeah.
PS Now is terrible.
Well, that's why I wish you could download the games. And there's some that now they allow that. They allow you to download it as long as your console is capable. That's the problem with a lot of, which they did just recently last week. That was a big story too. Is there was a patent filed by Mark Cerny
I saw
about backwards compatibility through a certain. So they're thinking maybe
An
either they
emulator.
have the tech,
Yeah.
or the tech is something that's some kind of amalgamation of what he's thought up and they haven't put it into practical use yet.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: if Sony can do backwards compatibility on the PS5 with their entire back catalog, you'll not only win over fan support like Microsoft did, but you really will open up a door to a lot of those major games that were untapped for so long that people want to revisit.
I say the only reason I still have my PS3 is that's the only way I can play Metal Gear or the older God of War games.
I was gonna say the HD collection. I tried. I played through 2 on PS Now, and it's just I'm like, this is an inferior experience, and I shouldn't be held to that because I'm penalized for buying the latest console.
Yeah.
Like that's just come on, Sony.
One thing Sony's got that Xbox doesn't have is VR.
That's true.
And PSVR 2 is they're saying that is, even though it's got one cord, it's going to blow away anything VR related that's on the market in the price range.
And
it's
that's
blow
where
away
I would
Oculus.
I say that's where I'd be okay with the cord. If it truly does blow everything else that's come out of the water, it's like okay, well then maybe I just say
120 hertz in each eye, like
eye
it's going to be
tracking,
eye tracking. It's gonna be amazing, and if they can keep it under $500,
they got to show me.
I was gonna say, and not only that, I played your Quest. Was it Quest 2?
Probably you've played both. I
haven't played the
Quest 2
VR.
now.
I haven't played the PlayStation VR.
No. I'm saying you've played. I had the Quest 1.
Oh
and 2.
yeah.
both.
The Quest 2 is great.
Yeah,
wireless. I mean,
because it's wireless.
For the experience that you get with it, it to me, it didn't sell me on it. Obviously, I didn't buy one, but it made me a believer in. Okay, this tech would be cool to have when it is done well enough that I could. It's more than just a demo.
At its price point at $299.
Yeah, that's insane.
I don't think there's anything else like it, and I think it's well worth the price.
Which of course, there's still rumors that Apple's going to dip their toe into that.
They said theirs is going to be around $3,000.
See, and here's
the price point.
Then I better not wear a damn thing on my head. I'll just say that.
I better
it's going
put
to be
some glasses
goggles.
on.
Yes.
It's basically a pair of goggles.
But even then, I'm just like, I roll my eyes because I'm like, I hate to say it, but Apple, in terms of, they may be able to perfect something. And granted, I know this was Steve Jobs' line with the iPad or the iPod originally was like, hey, look, they had Discman and they had these other but we perfected it. And I know Apple's done that more than they have, made great original devices like the iPhone.
Yeah.
But when they got into this game, I'm just like, no. I'm like, either one, you're now playing catch up, or you're just playing with tech to just you're gonna sell it because it has the Apple name. And I have no doubt.
Same thing with the car.
Right. I was like, I have no doubt it'll be quality. It will definitely be quality.
Mm-hmm.
But will it be something that pushes us forward to what we never thought would exist? No. I think
I don't
that
know.
secret sauce
We're
is
gonna
gone.
put them Apple VR things on. It's gonna be
This-
like in Ready
look,
Player One, man.
We're on iteration 7 of the Apple Watch, and
It's the same watch.
It's the
Yeah.
same watch.
I mean, it really is
faster, but look, and I'm saying that was Tim Cook's big thing.
Yeah.
His first
25%
major,
faster.
yeah. And I'm like, come on, guys, that was a wearable you
look.
made, 7 years ago now?
Yeah.
5-6 years ago. It's like there's got to be something better that pushes their technology forward in a way like the iPhone did. And I'm not saying we got to have a revolutionary product every year. But it's been enough time. It's like you can tell the intuitiveness and the innovation is.
Nobody's
sorry.
look.
Phil Schiller
all you
even said it
need-
about the trash can iMac or trash can Mac Pro, and it's like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, they trashed that, didn't they?
I was just gonna say nothing's gonna beat the Oculus and Meta. You're gonna put that on. You can get in your Meta.
That's true.
That's I'm telling you. That's truly the Ready Player One experience right there. Everybody
that
knows,
is,
so.
and no doubt,
Scary,
it is.
too.
It is.
It is
Alrighty, guys.
terrifying.
Yeah, we cheaped out. We talked about something in story time that really wasn't story time.
Hey,
we had stories.
It was a story time for
yeah,
me.
we talked about it a little bit.
I
we
mean,
had our own stories.
The one way I do look at this, just real quick, if Microsoft is having to buy all of these gaming companies to have this content,
Yeah.
then that means Sony already won the console war.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Nobody wants to put it that
nobody
way, but
wants
I
to
would
put
agree.
it that way.
It's like they
but
did.
The PlayStation outsells the Xbox.
Yeah.
Big
Well,
time.
and look-
then not only that, but it's just like that's their only game plan. They can't
Well,
win
I was gonna say,
with the hardware.
After
so
the
they gotta win with the
360
software.
era, they had a chance to capitalize on the market, and but again, I think their focus has always been very minute. And to me, with Microsoft, and look, just like I've used their Surface laptops, I've used Windows 10 for obviously my main driver for the last 3-4 years, but it's like. At the end of the day, Microsoft always, I feel like, overpromises and underdelivers.
Yep.
And they always have this great insight into what the future and all this tech. I mean, look, they've shown the HoloLens on so many different.
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's great tech behind it, and it's cool that they're pushing ways. I think it's awesome. But at the end of the day, if it's not tangible or practical for me to use in my daily life,
Yep.
then you lose out. And I think they had a real chance, but their focus has always been very slim when it comes to how is this actually going to apply in everyday life towards people. It may push tech into the next generation, but when somebody can hone in and make it like an iPhone, that's why you become an iPhone and synonymous with, I need this. I've got to have it as part of my daily life. And I just don't think Microsoft has had that secret sauce. Yeah, Windows 95 back in the day, you're still the main driver on PCs. You've cemented that.
Yep.
But where have you come since then? Where have you come since productivity apps with Microsoft Office? It's like you don't have any other hugely demanding. Xbox really was that brand, and they pushed it forward with 360, and then they backslid.
Yeah.
Their focus got way too narrow or way too broad, I would say, actually, with the Xbox One, and it tanked. It tanked the brand, and the brand has struggled ever since Xbox One.
Yeah.
And really with Game Pass, I mean, I get it. I know what he's broadly trying to do, and I applaud him. He really is making Xbox relevant again, but in name only, not in what it was originally.
Yeah.
But again, that's what a rebrand is, and it's slowly cementing itself and taking time. But he's bringing it back to relevance, and he's making it worthwhile. So I mean, if you can get that experience on any platform, hey, maybe we'll all be talking about how amazing and wonderful Game Pass is, and we play it more than our PS5 in the years to come. We'll see. It's a huge gamble. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Like always, right there at the bottom, email rmpodcast@redmoonproductions.com. Thank you all so much.
I was.
You all were entertained?
I was entertained.
I was.
We went
I
a little
thought
long.
This was a good show.
I knew it would be packed tonight.
All right,
That's why
well.
we should have dove in quicker.
All right, well,
let's
go.
Let's start reading now.
He's going to bust out his Shakespeare.
Pray heaven did not. I already screwed up. Well, that's it.
That was
That's
great.
it. That's enough Shakespeare.
That's exactly how I felt about Macbeth.
Oh, she did it.
Oh, you.
Sorry.
comes.
Wet. Where'd you get wet from?
Did she tip
You
over
got
the
her
water?
wet?
I'll go find out.
I got her new water bowls, and she's probably already tipped it over.
She went swimming in the kitchen.
That's going to do it for this episode.
I don't know if it was that or her just licking on her paw. I don't know. We'll find out.
Like, share, subscribe, all of our social right there at the bottom of the screen. Red Moon Book, Red Moon Tweet, Red Moon Picks, and of course, just search for Red Moon Productions on YouTube. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And he's rubbing his nipples. Just for everybody out
If
there.
he don't, I will.
She's back again.
She said,
Oh.
nipple rubbing, let me join in.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.